Let's go and say hi first, shall we?
Hi.
Oh, here we are. There he is. Hello there and welcome to episode 7 of the Knitter Next Door podcast. It is Friday the 5th of October and you are joining me in my home with my little boy Ezra, who is just about to go for his nap, aren't you? So you're going to say goodbye to everybody?
No.
No? What are you going to say instead?
Press it.
You're going to say press it, are you? Okay, fair enough. Press the button then. So I'll see you shortly. Hello again. Thank you for joining me for episode 7 of the Knitter Next Door podcast. My name is Angela, or Angie B, and you are joining me, as I said, in my home, which is in Mansfield in Nottinghamshire, which is sort of fairly centrally located within the UK. I live here with my husband Richard and our 2 sons, Aidan and Ezra. Aidan's 13, Ezzy just turned 2 a couple of weeks ago. We've got 2 naughty Bengal cats called Lily and Teddy. Teddy's fast asleep on the chair over there and Lily's kind of having a wash over there. We've also got a staffy called Layla or Bernard or Layla Bean or Bum or Bernard Bum or any of another about 800 different names that she gets called anything but her actual name Layla. But yeah, I actually gathered that that's fairly common. I saw something floating around on Instagram the other day that made me feel a whole lot better about our strange pet name insanity. If you wanted to connect with me online, you can find me on Instagram as @AngieB_79, or you could find me also on Ravelry as AngieB1979. Right then, so it's fairly reasonable day actually for saying it's October. We've got a bit of grey cloud out there, but otherwise it's reasonably bright. It's actually still quite warm as well. I think today we've had around about 18-19 degrees, so I think that's roughly in the region of about 60ish Fahrenheit, something like that. So it's reasonable. It's nice. It's definitely sweater weather though. And that meme online that's been going around really made me chuckle. The thing off of Saturday Night Live. If you've not seen it, do look it up. There's these just 2 women going, well, it's sweater weather. Yeah, sweater weather. It's sweater weather. It's okay though because it's sweater weather. Sweater weather. So yeah, it's definitely sweater weather. Okay, I don't know where I was quite going with that, but anyway, we'll leave that to one side. So that's enough about the weather. Okay, so today I've got a couple of finished objects for you, and I've got one sort of fairly major work in progress that's so nearly finished. It's really irritating that I've not got it done, but never mind, it is what it is. So we'll dive straight in, shall we? So then, moving into finished objects, you will be able to see. Hopefully you can see I'm not naked underneath this thing. It did look a bit dodgy, I think, at the beginning. But this is my Like a Cloud Cardigan. I don't know what's up with me this afternoon, honestly. By Joji Locatelli. So this has been sort of quite a fairly popular pattern over the summer, actually. It was a pattern that was released for a retreat, Helen Stewart's retreat, which was sort of in Bath quite a few months ago, I think maybe May or June, something like that. And this was a pattern that was released for the people that went on that retreat. It then came out a little bit later for general public to be able to buy. I've said on previous podcasts I was inspired by Tommy Trujillo and by Kristen Lira of the Squirrel Pie Productions and Yarngasm podcasts, respectively. They were both working on this cardigan, and I thought, you know what, I have to join in. I really have to do that. I don't mind jumping on the bandwagon. I try to avoid it, but if it's one that I particularly want to jump on, I will jump on it. So that's kind of where I stand with the whole sort of bandwagon issue. But yes, this was one that I definitely wanted to jump on. It's knitted in Wool & Vine yarn. So that's Kristen Lura, the lady who has the Yarngasm podcast. That's her yarn that she hand dyes and sells. It's 2 different yarns of hers that are actually held together. So there's one that's a lace weight Blueface Leicester. That's her, I think it's the Infinity Lace. And then it's held together with a kid mohair and silk blend, which is also a lace weight. And I think that one's called her Ghost Lace. I think I got that the right way around. It's definitely Ghost Lace and Infinite Lace, but I'm just not sure which is which. They're both in the colourway Weep, and yeah, I'm just trying to give you an idea of what this looks like then now. The last time you saw it, I think I was about, I don't know, maybe a third of the way through the first sleeve, and so obviously now it is completely finished. I'll give you a better view of this if I just sort of turn around slowly. You can see that it fits really, really nicely, which is actually really, really lucky. I was a very silly girl really and didn't swatch properly. And when I say I didn't swatch properly, I do mean I didn't swatch at all, which is rubbish, and I don't suggest to anybody that they do that, but I'm terrible at swatching. My usual sort of go-to really is just start the project, get so far in, then measure it, and, you know, sort of hope for the best, rather than, you know, doing a swatch. I don't know why. I will swatch, I have swatched, and I do swatch for certain things, but the majority of the time I'm really lazy with it, so I'm really, really sorry, but there we go. Anyway, swatching to one side, back to the cardigan. I have to say, and I don't really like to say it, but it's probably not the most enjoyable thing I've ever knit at all. It was great to begin with, and I really enjoyed knitting the first part of it, and the construction was really, really interesting. You started originally, you knit flat across the back, sort of straight across from one shoulder to the other shoulder, and you knit down in that direction. And then when you'd finished sort of just to the underarms, you picked up stitches and knit down these two front panels, which gave you this really sort of cool construction there for the back of the neck and how that came. So when I got to about here, you know, things had been going really swimmingly. I'd been knitting what felt like really, really quickly. I think I got that done in just, you know, a couple of days, and I thought, oh, brilliant, you know, I'll have this thing off the needles really, really quickly. And I was enjoying it. But the further I got through the knit, once I'd connected, you know, across here, across the back and round to this side, by that point you'd got, you know, quite a few hundred stitches on the needle, if I remember correctly, or at least say 200 plus. I can't remember exactly what the amount was, but it seemed like a lot for every round. And of course, I don't know, just over a period of time, it just sort of got a bit boring, and I'm really, really sorry. The yarn was beautiful though, and there were sort of respite rows. I think the thing was, to get this all over textured pattern, as you can see, it's basically it's alternating knits and purls, and then there's some stockinette rows and that sort of thing. And I just think because it was just this huge all over textured pattern, eventually it just kind of got to the point where I'm like, oh, I just want to do stockinette. And I don't know why stockinette necessarily would have been any less boring than doing knits and it's all knitting. I don't know what it was. I really don't know what it was. I'm struggling to sort of put my finger on why I didn't necessarily enjoy the process as much as I perhaps thought I was going to, or as much as I did at the beginning, but I didn't, and that's just my honest opinion of how I found this as a knit. That being said, you know, people do talk about this sort of product knit versus process knit. For me, while this wasn't necessarily a process knit, the finished product is just gorgeous, and it is so warm, and it is so soft, and it's such a gorgeous colour, and it's snuggly, and it kind of just, it goes with everything. So yeah, albeit I didn't necessarily enjoy it, I'm really, really enjoying having it in my wardrobe. So I'm so pleased that I knitted it, and it's a gorgeous, gorgeous pattern. And that's literally, that's just me, that's my opinion, or that's how I found it as a knit. You know, it's certainly, I wouldn't want to put anybody off knitting it, because as a project it's fantastic, and the finished item fits a dream and is just beautiful. I blocked it according to the schematic that Joji provided in her pattern, so it all came out exactly precisely to the specific measurements that she suggested. I did take a little bit of footage whilst I was blocking as well, so I'll pop that in here for you just so you can have a little nosy at what I did. is like a cloud going for a bath. Finished it last night. Today is Saturday, the 20 something of September. 21st, maybe? Oh, I don't know. 22nd. Whatever. It's the Saturday before the podcast. So that has finished having its bath now. And actually, the water looks kind of alright. I wonder if I get a glass, if we'll be able to see if there's any water colour change. Yeah, just going to see what the water's like. It looks pretty clear. Here's my like a cloud blocking on the table. Included in the pattern there's a schematic that basically tells you what measurements you're aiming for. So all I've done is I've popped it on the table and sort of loosely pulled it into the measurements required. It can sort of shrink down a little bit directly afterwards, so I've just pulled it like sort of slightly beyond what it said. I was aiming for 19.5 here, and I've just pulled it out to 20 because as it dries it will probably sort of just shrink back slightly, but you can really drastically alter the shape of it by kind of moving it around. So really I've just wanted to start with the measurements that Joji had suggested in the pattern, and yeah, it's looking pretty good. I'm waiting for it to dry and then I'm going to be able to wear it. Yay! That is the colour. That's the right colour. So, dogs and cats and blocking mats and husband finishing the patio. Right then, so again, just to give you one final better look at the cardigan, I want to just sort of lift up this arm and show you, and this arm and show you. Well, there was one thing, whilst I was knitting it, according to the pattern, she said, you know, just stop it at, I can't remember what the length was, underarm here. She said, or 4 inches from your preferred arm length. The length that she'd said to knit it sort of brought the sleeve to about here, pre-blocking. Now, post-blocking, I actually sort of adjust this around to where I would actually normally wear it. Post-blocking, the sleeves have come out to here, which I was so pleased with. It was tempting to keep knitting them and make them longer, but if I had done so, if I'd have ignored her direction in the pattern, I would have ended up with like stupid long gorilla arm sleeves. So yeah, they blocked really nicely and comfortably to the length specified in the pattern, which when you put it on gives you a sleeve about this sort of length, which it's perfect really. I like to have my sleeves, as I think I've said in other episodes, just that little bit longer, just so that you can pull them over and onto your hand if you want to, but not so long as you can't just sort of readjust it and have it, you know, completely out of your way if you want to. I like that just sort of slight adjustability on it, and I think yeah, this is written really well for having that feature as a garment. I love the fact that when I'd finished it, there is no button band to have to pick up, so literally you finish the body and the sleeves and you're done. There is no mucking about, nothing, no ends particularly to sew in, other than, you know, just like the bit where you finally cast off at the end, and then these two that I've still not done on the sleeves because I am incredibly lazy. I mean, how long would that have taken me? But I went to Yarndale wearing this thing with those just poked in. Oh well, never mind. It'll happen at some point eventually, I'm sure, or it won't, but never mind. It's finished, and it is finished, so yeah, whatever. Anyway, yes, I love it. I really love it. It fits like a dream. It's a wonderful construction, really cleverly written pattern. The sleeves, oh dear me, I hated knitting them. I'm so sorry, but I really hated knitting them. Something about small circumference knitting plus this all over textured panel just put me right off. Actually, you know what? Once I got down to the ribbing bit, that would normally be my worst nightmare, just continually swapping back from knit and purl. But if anything, I didn't find that as bad, which is weird. But I'm going to stop moaning about it because I love it. It's really, really lovely. It's really, really nice. And I enjoy wearing it. So, yes, thoroughly recommend it if you don't mind an all-over textured pattern. It knits up fairly quickly. Certainly at the beginning it's nice. It's just, I think, you know, it turns into a little bit of a slog towards the end. But I guess, you know, that's the same with anything really, isn't it? I think for me, probably what did me in was I knit it over the summer, which when the weather got really, really hot, that probably wasn't necessarily the best time to be, you know, working on something that was really warm and quite big and chunky and all the mohair, etc. So I put it down for a month or so, and I think at that point I'd almost started to lose interest in it as a project because, you know, I'd had all the initial sort of yay bit that all gone, and then I'd not worked on it for a month. And so then it almost felt like, you know, a bind that I had to get it finished because I spent a lot of money on the yarn and I really wanted the finished object. So I don't know, maybe that played into me perhaps not enjoying it as much as perhaps I wanted to. I'm rambling. Anyway, it's lovely. And that's that one. Just then one little last look for you at the whole thing. I think what I'll try and do is just climb up a little bit so you can see how this thing actually falls at the bottom. So yeah, there you go. You can see it's for me, I really like something that just kind of comes that little bit longer. I don't mind wearing cropped items, but I do like something to just cover my bottom if possible. So yeah, that's my Like a Cloud Cardi. I'm dead pleased with it. I'm not sure how to approach one little bit of feedback that I have on this, and that was that whilst I was knitting with this yarn, I think because it's such a saturated colour, there was an issue with the colour actually sort of leaking off and onto my hands. I didn't have any transfer onto anything else. But there would be times when I was knitting on it that my hands, they looked like I'd been like playing around with newspapers. You know, I used to get newspaper, or maybe people who are old enough to remember like having regular access to newspapers, you would get newspaper print on your hands from reading them if you were reading it for any length of time. And it was like that. I'd got this sort of, you know, black, inky impression all over my fingers. So I just thought, well, you know, I just thought that because the yarn was hand dyed, maybe, you know, although Kristen will have absolutely 100% rinsed it until the water ran clear, there is always the chance that you're still going to get, you know, a little bit of bleeding. And they do, on hand dyed yarn skeins, tend to sort of warn you of that. It'll say, you know, you might get a little bit of bleeding. So yeah. But what had never happened to me before was that it would actually come off onto my hands while I was knitting. So I was curious when I blocked it to see if there would be any dye coming out into the water, just based on the amount that kept coming out onto my hands. But there was nothing, absolutely nothing at all came out into that water. The water was crystal clear after I'd soaked it. So yeah, you know, I think probably what I wanted to say was to other people, you know, don't, if you find that you're getting the dye on your hand, it is something that can and does happen, and it's not necessarily, you know, anyone's fault. It's just, you know, peculiar to this particular type of production process. And certainly, yeah, since I've had it as a garment, since it had that final bath and was blocked, and now I'm not knitting with it, you know, it's not transferring any stains onto anything at all. But yeah, that was just something else that I wanted to just feed back on, just to for your information, I guess. There we go. So the last time I saw you, at the very end of the podcast, I mentioned that I was going to be going to the Atlantic Knitscape knitting retreat with my mother-in-law. So yeah, I've been and come back, and it was amazing. So I just wanted to kind of talk you through a little bit about that experience. So it was the Friday in September, I think. What would have been the date? 14th of September that we went. And So we went on the Friday the 14th of September. My mother-in-law, she lives up in Cumbria, so she drove down to where we live to begin with, and then my husband drove us all down to East Midlands Airport, where we caught a plane, which really quick. It just took sort of about an hour or so. We took a plane over to Knock, which is the airport in Ireland closest to where we were going, which was Killadoon in County Mayo, on the west coast of Ireland there. So we arrived in Knock Airport, having had a bit of a nightmare through East Midlands, actually. You know what, I'll tell you more about that. So I took a couple of knitting projects with me for the weekend. I took my Deco Drape shawl, and I took this, because this was still just in first sleeve phase at the time. And I've never had a problem in the past. The first time I took knitting needles on a plane was just over a year ago to a holiday in Turkey, and I was really concerned that they might get confiscated. So I went to all the, I took wooden needles, and they were sort of rubbishy ones that I wasn't worried about losing, etc., etc. And I had no problem at all. They didn't even look at them. And they said, look, you can bring knitting needles. You've been able to bring them for a long time, so it wouldn't matter if they were metal. Just bring what you want next time. Don't worry about it. So after that holiday, we went, last Christmas, we went over to Lanzarote, and I thought I'd test it. So I just took a pair of my metal Chowgoo needles with a project on it, and yeah, no problem at all. So America, I had hires in my hand luggage, I'm saying, no problem at all. So I was a bit complacent, I guess, and I just assumed that if I did my usual, having them, out ready, calling attention to it and saying, look, here's my knitting, this is, what these are, and actually physically getting them out and showing them to the people in security, that, it would be okay. Except this time it really wasn't. So I had a bit of a panic on East Midlands Airport, because the lady was just like, so I was like, oh, okay, I thought they'd be all right. I've not had a problem in the past. And she's like, well, they're a bit pointy and they're a bit long. I was like, oh, okay. So yeah, they were just my normal Chowgoo ones. Let me just show you what it was. They were those. So yes, they're a bit pointy and a bit long. You can't trust these knitters, you see. So yeah, I thought, well, let's not argue too much. Let's just see what happens. So she went off and had a bit of a grumpy strop at a machine, and she made me put them through the scanner. Fair enough, same as you do with all your stuff. And she didn't actually after that say anything else at all. So our bags just kind of went through the machine, and we went and waited the other side. Now, we took, because it was such a short haul flight, and because I was only going away for a couple of days, I did not have any checked baggage. The airline that I was flying with as well, like literally, absolutely every last little thing is modular. So if you wanted to take luggage to be checked into the hold, you would have had to have paid extra. So we were just taking hand luggage only, so I had no option but to have to take my needles on the plane with me as well. It wasn't like I could take them out and store them anywhere else. They had to come with me. So I'm now starting to sweat a little bit and thinking, oh great, I'm going to a knitting retreat and I'm not going to have any knitting needles. This is going to be brilliant. This is going to be great fun. I'm going to have to, borrow something from somebody or whatever, I'm going to have to take these two projects off the needles, So anyway, I went through, I'd got my sleeves balled up as well like this as I went through the scanner, and so I set off the alarm, and then the underwires on my bra, I ended up getting, patted down. I clearly looked a bit suspicious that day, but these guys, they do a fantastic job and they keep everybody safe, so I have no complaint about that. We then went and had to wait for my dodgy bags coming through. And there was, it there was quite a queue of people, and I don't know kind of quite why, because it was a Friday, it was term time, so it shouldn't necessarily have been particularly a peak time, but I think possibly with that maybe they had less staff on than they would normally have had, so we waited for quite a while, and then finally a different lady came over to where they were going to actually search through the bags and have another look at my knitting needles, and she said, okay, do you mind if I just go and have a talk to my supervisor? So lovely lady she was. She's like, my colleague thinks that they're too long and that they're too pointy, and she doesn't think you should be allowed onto the plane with them, but I want to go and have a chat to my supervisors. I'm like, okay, that's, do what you need to. So yeah, she came back and she said, yeah, no problem at all, it's absolutely fine. So phew, a huge sigh of relief was sighed. You hear a lot of people say, well, what you can do is you can, disguise them in this, that, the other. For me, that is not an option. I want to call attention to it. I want to be upfront, and I want to say, look, here's my knitting needles. This is what they are, so that it doesn't look like I'm trying to hide anything. The other bit of advice I've had is, take a stamped addressed envelope, with your own address on it, and then if you have to take them off, you can just post them back to yourself. Yeah, I'm not going to do that. I'm too lazy to sew in the ends on my projects when I've finished something that I've been knitting for months. I'm too lazy to swatch, so I'm definitely too lazy and too disorganised to think of something like that, or not think of it, but to actually do it. I'm not going to do that. But it's a really good idea for those people who hadn't thought of it. There's a little tip, but yeah, it's not something I will do. Moving swiftly on, we got to the plane, and I was heckled for probably a good third of the journey by the gentleman sitting next to me who'd made the mistake of asking me what I was doing. I'm there knitting on the plane, as you do, and he's like, oh, so where are you off to then? I said, oh, I'm going to a knitting retreat with my mother-in-law, and he's like, oh, that's, you go and you doing what? It's like, yeah, I'm going to a knitting retreat. So we're going to a hotel. Right, okay, yeah, where are you going? I explained where I was going. And so you're going to knit? Yeah, I'm going to knit. And what else are you going to do? Well, I'm probably going to have a few drinks and some nice food, maybe go for a walk. All right, what else? I was like, well, just out of curiosity, what are you doing? And he was there with a group of his mates, and they were going to the races. I was like, right, so you're going to go and watch some dogs running around, and you're going to drink and have nice food. And he's like, okay. But yeah, about every sort of 10 or 15 minutes is like, so you're just going to knit? That's what you just knitting? Like, yes. Can we leave it now? Nice gentleman. So anyway, that was that. So apparently it's the most bizarre thing that anyone on the planet can do, So, but there we go. So we arrived in Knock at the airport. No problem getting off the plane and getting through and outside there at all. It's really tiny, beautiful little place. Got straight outside. There was a line of taxi drivers there. Bet, so that's my mother-in-law, and I had decided against trying to get to the hotel on public transport. We were just a little bit far away. It's about an hour and a half drive. So we could have taken a bus over to a town to then get on a train to then pick up a taxi at the other end. But yeah, I think Bet had been up since about, I don't know, maybe about 4:30 or 5 o'clock that morning. She'd had probably a 3-hour drive to our house. It's then an hour from us to the airport, an hour on the plane. So we just wanted to get there. So we picked up a taxi. It was probably fairly expensive to do that, but so worth it. We didn't mind at all. We really, really didn't mind at all. And you know what? The taxi driver, he was brilliant. He was absolutely ace. He was telling us, all the local stories and things as we drove, and was explaining about Crowpatrick, which is a mountain which is quite close to the hotel where we were staying, and about the pilgrimages that they have there, because St. Patrick had fasted at the top of the mountain in the 400s or something like that. So we were getting all this story about the place, and ghost stories, and this is where that happened. So it was brilliant. It was like having our own personal tour guide. So that was great. He gave us his card at the end, and you know what, we rang the same guy to come and take us back to the airport as well. So he was really, really lovely. When we arrived at the hotel, we were probably some of the first people to arrive. I think there was one other lady was there, but Catherine, so that's Catherine, what's her surname? Catherine Hastings. She's the lady who runs the retreat. She was there, and we were greeted so warmly. It was like, I don't know, maybe like coming home, you know, and seeing family that you've not seen for ages. It was just hugs and oh, you know, you just felt so welcome, which was really, really lovely. The hotel manageress was there immediately with our keys. First thing we did was go sort of straight upstairs and take a look at our rooms. My room was facing the ocean side, looking straight out at Clare Island, and so it was absolutely beautiful. On the ride out there, the scenery, as it changed from, you know, you were in civilization and you gradually got further and further out towards the coast, it was wild, and I mean wild like, you know, remote and I don't want to use the word bleak because bleak's not the right word, but kind of somewhere along those lines, you know, that there was less and less stuff and more open, and then you have the mountains and there's sort of cattle in the fields, and it was beautiful, absolutely beautiful. I will put some video footage in to kind of show you what I mean about the landscape, but it was remote. It was really, really remote. The Ocean Lodge in Killadoon, which is where we were staying, is probably no more than like 5 minutes walk down to the beachfront there, and it's a pebbly and sandy beach, and it's so clean, and yeah, so anyway, there we go. So we met up with Catherine, we went and had a look at our rooms. I was incredibly impressed with my room. It was beautiful and clean, it was really nicely laid out, it had a wonderful view. Came back downstairs and were welcome to kind of the knitting area, which was like a raised section within the bar, where we were kind of setting up for the weekend. So we sat and had a drink and a chat, and gradually over the course of the afternoon more and more people began to arrive. There were several of us that were newbies to the experience, that had never been before, and then there were a couple of people who'd been on previous years. So this Atlantic Knitscape retreat is something that Catherine's been running for, I think it's about 4 years now. I think she started in 2014. I hope I've got that right. But I do know that ours was the 20th retreat that she's actually held, because she made a point of telling us that she has a couple in May, and she usually does a couple in September each year as well. So yeah, ours just happened to be the 20th retreat. There were people from mostly Ireland, where they'd come from, Ireland and Northern Ireland. There was one lady that's kind of from Scotland and then spent time in San Francisco and had since, you know, come to live in Ireland. There was a lady who is an indie dyer. Her and her husband were there. They'd come over from Northern Ireland. There was myself and Bet from England, and then there was a lady who currently was spending her time in Ireland, but she's actually from, I think it was Vancouver in Canada. So yeah, there was a good mix of people from different backgrounds and places. There was a lady there with her mum. I was there with my mother-in-law. I think pretty much everyone else was on their own, but Bernie, the indie dyer, she was there with her husband. Catherine's husband popped in a couple of times. You know, there was a good mix of people. It was really, really nice. People had brought projects that were sort of chatting friendly. So there were socks and shawls. There was knitting and crochet. There was one lady there who brought her spinning wheel. So, you know, there was a good variety of different things that people were working on as well. The Saturday, there was a yarn market to be held. So Catherine explained all the details about that. She told us the details for the tide as well. because the tide affected the local beach. So she explained to us that, if we wanted to go and have a walk down to the beach and see it at its best and be able to actually get down onto the beach itself, we needed to be aware of when the tides were. So she gave us that information as well. She explained to us about some different walks that we could do locally, but she did also make it really, really clear and was really friendly about saying, look, you're here to relax and to enjoy yourself and to do precisely what you want to do. If you don't want to go for a walk, don't feel that you've got to go and have a walk. But if you do, here's the places to go. It was really laid back, really friendly, really relaxed, and very much do as you please. There was a lady there that was offering a massage service, and again, she just kind of brought a list in and said, if you want a massage, stick your name on there, and these are my prices. And yeah, the bar was sort of right by us, and then there's a little restaurant further down where we could get our evening meal and our breakfast as well. So that was all included in the price. And yeah, so we just sat and knitted and chatted and saw new things. And the Saturday we did go for a walk down onto the beach, which was absolutely beautiful. The yarn market on the Saturday, then that was brilliant. We had access to several different indie dyers who'd left their wares there. So there was Dye Candy, Old Maiden Aunt, a Bear in Sheep's Clothing, You Mama, and Cottage Number 9. There was stuff from each of those. There may well have been others that I'm not remembering as well, but those are the sort of main ones that stuck out to me. Bernie Kennedy and her husband Derek, they'd actually joined us for the weekend, and so Bernie's yarn was particularly being showcased. She was there to kind of show it to us, and beautiful stuff. My mother-in-law came away with a couple of skeins of that, which I can show you. I had a Dye Candy in my sights because there was a test knit that I was doing for Bad Wolf Girl Sits and Knits, so that's Meghan Regan, and I'll talk to you more about that later. But yeah, I had my eye on these two particular skeins, and Catherine helped me choose those. I also bought a project bag and a couple of other bits and pieces. I'll show you these when I do my my stash acquisition. But I just wanted to give you a little bit of a feel for the stuff that was available there. So there was a yarn market, which was really, really enjoyable and completely no pressure. You don't have to buy anything. I think there were people who didn't, and then there were people that bought quite a bit. That it was there if you wanted it. The evening meals that I had on the Friday and the Saturday night were absolutely outstanding. It was really sort of quite simple fare, but so nicely cooked and so well prepared, and it was absolutely delicious. So I just had a chicken and mash and sauce on the Friday night, and then on the Saturday I had a curry, a chickpea curry with some chicken in there as well, and it was delicious, really, really nice. But you had a 3-course meal. That was just my main. There were beautiful starters and desserts and stuff in there as well. Coffee was kept flowing, and there was lots of wine and gins to be had. And lovely conversation with really, really lovely people. The first night when Catherine had told us that Bear in Sheep's Clothing were going to be there, I'd heard of them, but wanted to just kind of be a little bit more familiar with her things that she does. So I went and did a little bit of my own research, and I found that she had a little podcast. So I watched a couple of episodes of that with her and her husband, and one which was with Bernie and her daughter. Her daughter was standing in for her husband on that particular episode, and oh my, they were so cute. and just telling, you know, little jokes and things, and showing on, you know, the lovely knitting and the yarn and stuff. So yeah, it was just really, really cute. So I happened to bring that up with Bernie the next day, that I'd watched a podcast, and just, you know, asked her a few things about that, and we got chatting about various things. And her husband was knitting on a Stephen West project that was very similar in the way that some of the increases were being constructed to my Deco Drape shawl. Derek as well, he makes wooden yarn bowls, and so I was asking him about that, because my father-in-law, he's quite into his woodworking, and I wondered just what the process was. I was quite interested by that. So that was that. Whilst we were there, I actually managed to get one of the ladies had brought an Ashford Joy spinning wheel with her, and I was really quite excited by that, because over the last few months, probably to about a year or so, actually it's not just a few months, about a year, I've been sort of thinking about spinning and wondering about it, and wondering whether maybe it's something I wanted to do. And from the research that I'd done, the Ashford Joy was the wheel that I'd particularly landed on as being the one that was interesting to me, and a lady had brought one with her. So I got to have a go on that, and I produced something that can only be described as ungodly with my first spin. It's absolutely horrendous. You know what, I'm going to show you. I'll just go and fetch it. So yeah, I spun this beast, this ungodly, monstrous thing. Oh dear, seriously, you know, I had a conversation with Chevy Rell about it, and I said to her, you know what, seriously, I'm not sure whether or not it's actually safe to sleep with this thing in the house. It's got teeth, and I think it might eat my children. But I was assured that I will love it, and it will forever be my little yarn baby, and I will, you know, just kind of keep it forever. And my thought was, yeah, that's if I don't actually just beat it with a cricket bat to make sure it's dead first. But yeah, that was my first ever attempt at spinning ever. And I really enjoyed it. Really enjoyed it. And it felt so natural, even though it was a bit rubbish. It felt great, you know, just the feeling of the yarn and how relaxing it was, and just the drafting process. I really felt like it was something I'd always done. And there was a couple of remarks from people, actually, you know, well, oh, so you've done that before, haven't you? You know, this isn't your first time. I was like, no. It's my very first time. The most I'd ever done was I'd done a little bit of drafting onto a drop spindle using a park and draft technique, but that is it. And that was one night back in January this year, when I got brave enough to go to my local guild of weavers and spinners and sort of, you know, go and sort of ask them to take pity on me and show me how to do it. But yeah, that was that. It was like, I don't know, maybe 10 minutes at the end when I got brave enough to actually ask if I could have a go, instead of just sitting there knitting and looking at all the people with their spinning wheels. So yeah, there we go. So that was the Saturday. On the Sunday morning, really all we had left to do was to have our breakfast, have a little mooch around. I went and got some footage of the little cows in the field and the beach, and then we were waiting for our taxi to come and take us back to the airport. So it was all done and gone and finished and over with in a flash. It went so fast, because we had such a lovely time, but equally it felt like we'd been there forever, and that we'd always known all the people that were there. So I would say to anybody, if it's something that you're considering doing, just go, just do yourself a favour and just go. It's wonderful. You'll have a really lovely time. It's so relaxing. You've got nothing to do, and in the best way possible. You've got nothing that you have to do, and you can just chat and enjoy being with like-minded people. You know, everyone's into fibery goodness, and everyone's interested in what everyone else is knitting, and it's just nice. So that was the Atlantic Knitscape. I did get a little badge from Catherine. Everyone that attended got their Netscape badge, so I wanted to show you that, because that's now mine. I have got other bits of stash acquisition that I got whilst I was at the retreat, but what I'll do is I'll put that into the stash acquisition section a little bit later on in the podcast, to show you all my lovely goodies. So I touched on the fact that I had more than one finished object. My second finished object is probably, I don't know whether it's fair to class it as a finish or not. It's kind of finished. It's kind of not quite finished, but it's finished enough that I've already worn it. Washed it, blocked it. But yeah, this is me we're talking about. You've seen how rubbish I am at actually sticking to anything. So anyway, this is the sea glass top, which is a test knit for Meghan of the Bad Wolf Girl Sits and Knits podcast. I follow her on Instagram, and we've had a dialogue going backwards and forwards actually since she had her MS diagnosis a few months ago, and that's because I've had experiences in the same lines myself. Let's say about a year and a half ago I went completely blind randomly in my left eye for no apparent reason, and yeah, I was really worried, and I thought I'd had a stroke or something, or I'd got a brain tumour, and it just went. It was going, and then like a couple of days later there was just nothing. It was like I had my hand over my eye, and yeah, there was no measurable vision in there. I'd got, you know, zero field of vision, and the investigations were done, and it turns out essentially I've got lots of different lesions all over my brain. There's about 15 of them. They're only tiny, but yeah, the most likely diagnosis is MS. The diagnosis I've been given is clinically isolated syndrome, because to give you an official MS diagnosis, they essentially have to be able to prove not only that there is more than one lesion, but that there was a time lapse between the episodes, and the only clinically relevant episode that I can actually point to was the one where I lost my eyesight. I did explain actually though that over, you know, a period of several years I've gone through sessions of, you know, having months and months and months where I've not felt right. You know, I've been exhausted for no reason, or I've, you know, had just lost the feeling in my finger or my thumb, or, you know, there have been episodes that I would not be surprised at all if they were down to the same thing. And they did find, as I say, like 15 odd lesions on my brain when they did the MRI, but they could only categorically say that I'd got one clinically relevant episode, which was the one where I lost all my eyesight. I'm pleased to say my eyesight did come back. It was really frustrating because it was really slow, and I was terrified that it was not going to come back. You know, and then I was going to lose the sight in my other eye, or whatever. You know, it's kind of, it rocks your world when you just lose something that you completely take for granted, like your eyesight or your hearing or your sense of touch or the ability to walk, as it was in Meg's case. You know, it rocks your world, and it's terrifying, but it kind of is what it is. And there's not a lot anyone can do about it, and sitting around being miserable and worrying about it is kind of the last thing that's actually going to be of any help to you. It cemented my decision to continue to be a stay-at-home mum for my son Ezra. With Aidan, I went almost immediately back to work. He was only a few months old when I went back, but with Ezra, I was not feeling, this was the March as I'd had him the previous September, and I was not really feeling ready to go back to work. So when this happened, it then kind of put a question on the whole of the rest of my life for me. And I thought, right, at the moment, the worst thing that's wrong with me is I can't see out of this one eye. I've still got my other eye I can see out of. I'm still absolutely fine. I'm walking around and I'm fine. But I have got absolutely no idea for how long I am going to remain fine. And I might be fine for years and years and years and never have another problem. Or I might not be. And it might be that I can't speak, or it might be that I can't walk, or it might be that I suddenly become incontinent, because that'll be fun. But, you know, it's known as a snowflake illness because everyone's version of it is so very, very different to everyone else's, and yet they are all kind of the same. So it's the same. They're not the same, but you see, they're all pulling from a pool of different possible things that you could have in varying severities. So it's terrifying, but my outlook is one that's fairly pragmatic in terms of, you know, what I will just keep going on with what I'm going on with until I can't, and I will enjoy life and do what I want to do. And if I don't have to work, which I don't, my husband is more than happy for me to be at home and to enjoy the things that I'm doing and enjoy my son whilst I can and whilst he's young, then that's what I'm going to do. So it's done me a favour in many respects. But when I found out about Meg, going back to the original topic, that she was going through something similar, but I felt like I needed to reach out to her, so I did. And so since then we've kind of just been, we've had a friendly dialogue back and forth. That to one side. I saw, getting back on topic at some point, I'm sure, I saw on her Instagram, on her stories, that she was having a test knit for the pattern that she'd been showcasing on her podcast. She'd been designing a top which she'd called the Sea Glass, which I think was to do with the colour of the yarn that she first was knitting it in, but also it's kind of got waves of lace in there and all sorts of things, and it's this sort of beautiful racer back top that she was knitting on, and I thought how stunning it was. And so she put a call out for test knitters. I've never knit before for a test, and I thought, you know, it's something actually I could probably do. The deadline was Halloween. This was just before I went out to Atlantic Knitscape, so there was plenty of weeks, and I thought, yeah, I can definitely do that in that time. And my size, which was a 34, was free. So I put my name forward, and yeah, almost instantly she said yes, so that was great. So there's an Instagram group that the ladies who were involved in the test knit are all joined into, and we've been sharing our progress, and, like, you know, if there have been any sort of minor issues, anything like that with the pattern, we can raise those if necessary, and, you know, we can all have a talk together about this pattern. So whilst I was out at Atlantic Knitscape, there was pictures of people's yarn choices and pictures of people casting on, because it was the Friday that I left that the pattern came out to us. And so I got really jealous and whilst I was there knitting on my Joji Locatelli and my Stephen West shawl. But what I did have the opportunity to do was to choose some yarn actually at the yarn market specifically for this project. And what I got was some dye candy, which looks like this. So this was my yarn. I can put a picture of it in its skein form. But yeah, here's the label then. So this colourway is called Flump, and it's a really awesome sort of acid neon-y green. It's not showing up too well in the current light, but you can kind of get an idea. But I loved it because it's got all sorts going on in here. Thank you, Bernard. We've got like teal greens, little bits of cherry red, yellow. There's kind of streaks of dark grey almost to a black in there. There's tiny little bits that have almost resisted the dye altogether. There's all sorts going on in here, but overall it's kind of this funky acid green. It's a singles spun yarn in a 4-ply or finger-in weight, depending on where in the world you are. I'll show you that look. So it's superwash merino 70% and 30% silk. And yeah, there are 366 meters in the skein. I'm not sure if the skein was 100 grams or slightly more than that. I can't remember now, to be honest. But around about 100 grams, I think it was. So I bought 2 of these because that was what I needed to make the top. I've got 50 grams left at the end, or nearly the end. And so let me show you what I knit then. And so here is my nearly completed top. And you can see it goes down into some beautiful lace at the bottom, which actually I wasn't sure whether the lace would work with such a, you know, a speckled yarn, but I think it looks beautiful. It really just kind of finishes it off. It's a design that's meant to be worn with a couple of inches of sort of positive ease around the bust, and then plenty of ease around your waist and hips and stuff. So it's a really, really comfortable fit and such a beautiful knit. And I tell you what, this thing, I knitted it in about 5 days. I couldn't get enough of it. It was so addictive to knit. I really, really enjoyed it. Now, what I've got left to do is the edging around the arms. And what that will do is that will just improve the fit of it. I actually, as it stands at the moment, I really like the way that this fits. But Meg sort of has assured us that if we put on the I-cord edging around here, it will just sort of pull everything in together and just make it fit that bit more, you know, fittedly, that bit more comfortably. I don't know what the word is I'm after. But yeah, this was really, really cleverly constructed. We are to finish this knit by Halloween, so I've still got a few weeks to put my I-cords around there. But what I will do is I'll show you what this looks like at the moment. I actually wore this to Yarndale and I loved it, and there were several people that sort of came up to me and asked about it, and yeah, the lady that dyes this yarn has shared this project on her Instagram as well. I think it's just gorgeous. I think it's absolutely gorgeous. The yarn is fabulous. It's so silky smooth and soft to wear. It was beautiful to knit with. I've blocked this, washed it and blocked it, so you can see the stitches and how they've come out. They're just, it's wonderful. It really is. So let me pop it on and show you. Do a little strip tease. Don't know what that noise was. Good God. What was that? Oh well, never mind. This is the most graceful putting on of an item that anyone will have ever seen, I'm sure. So, here we are then. That's my finished sea glass top, or mostly finished sea glass top. I absolutely love this thing. I think it's so easy to wear. And yeah, once I've done the sort of I-cord around here, that'll bring this up and make it just that bit more fitted around there. But it's a racer back top. It's designed to have that construction there and to then come and fit nicely. And so you've got some ease in the bust there and plenty of ease everywhere else in the top. It's beautiful. There was a lady at Yarndale who said, you know, she wondered whether it was tenure, because I'd got my cardigan, my Like a Cloud, on over the top of it, and I think, yeah, she thought it was tenure. But obviously I showed her the lace is totally different to the lace on the tenure pattern. So yeah, that's that. So the test knit finishes at the end of October. So I would imagine Meg will be releasing the final pattern at some point after that. So that's definitely one to look out for. I will be knitting this repeatedly in all the colours that there are. For 150 grams of yarn, I think it's brilliant. You get such a lovely item out of it, and it flies off the needles. It absolutely flies. So so let's pop this one back off again then. Got fluff up my nose. Right then, so what am I going to talk about next? I have one giant beast of a work in progress that I have very, 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 very nearly finished now. And it's really irritating actually, because today being the 5th of October is the day that the Texture Time Mystery Knit Along by West Knits is actually released. I stayed up till midnight last night and downloaded the pattern when it first came out, which was fab. So I've got that all there, all ready to go. I've got my yarn, which I will show you in a bit as well. So I really wanted to have a West Knits shawl off the needles, but I failed. I put a post on Instagram a couple of days ago saying I've got like 9 rows to go, 700 stitches in a row, and could I do it? Well, the answer is no. But I'm nearly there. I have 4 more rows to do. That's all. I think it's 4. Let me check on my pattern. I'll be able to tell you very specifically. I am on a wrong side row next, which will be yeah, so I've got 4 more rows left to do, like I said. And then bind it off. But here it is. Here you go. This is the treat you've been waiting for. I've got my I've got my marker on from last time, so that if I can find it, there it is. That's where I was last time. So I think the time before that I was about here, and I'd done 20 rows, and so that's where I was the last time you saw it. And here is the beast. It is an absolute monster of a thing. I cannot fully get across to you just how big this beast is, but to tell you that at the moment there are around about 708 stitches in the row, somewhere along those lines. So this is one bit. So I'm on my final colour. This bit was the end of the first 2 colours. The yarn is by Skein. It's their Uptown Sock base. And so the 3 different colours were dyed specifically for the Stephen and Penelope yarn along for 2018. And this pattern, again, it was designed for the yarn along, so this isn't out at the moment, but it will be as of next year. So here we are, we're not even halfway across yet. This is the middle section, so that's the very, very middle. Just drink that in. It's so beautiful. When you got to the end of here though, you then were making a new stitch like every other stitch. There's a ton of new stitches on this ribbing bit on the end compared with what was on the needles just at this row. I think we picked up an extra 300 stitches in one row. It's like, oh, you're joking. Knit one, knit back and front, knit one, knit back and front. No, all the way across the entire row. Whoa. And there we go. So that's a row at the moment. So I timed myself. It's taking me about half an hour to get across a row, which is a long time to spend on one row. So yeah, I only have like 4 rows left, but that's still a good couple of hours of knitting. And then after that, I've then got to cast it off. So yeah, it's going to take me a while. I might get it done tonight if I pull my finger out, but then actually tonight, no, probably I'll be editing. So hopefully it'll get done this weekend, and then I can start my texture time. But I'm dead excited. Dead excited. This will be the first ever West Knits knit that I've ever done and completed. I've got one other one on the needles, but it's piddly nothing at the moment, so I can't really, claim to have any significant process on that at the moment. So this is my first, so to speak. And yeah, it looks like a giant penis coming out of the side of my face. So yes, this is my first. And yeah, I'm absolutely in love with it, and I think it is so gorgeous, and I am absolutely in love with the colours, and I can't wait to be able to wear it, because it's just a monster and it's going to be so wonderful. I love it. So yes, next time you see me, this will be finished and I will be wearing it, and I will be able to show you exactly what it looks like, and it will be all washed and blocked and what have you. I'll definitely get a bit of footage of that whilst I'm doing it, so you can see what this beast looks like when it's on the blocking mats, because I don't know if this is even going to fit on my table. My table is massive, but I don't know, this one might end up having to get blocked on the floor or on my bed or something. I don't know, we'll see. We shall see, but I've got a feeling it's going to be a monster. So yeah, that's this one. Really, really enjoying knitting it. It's extremely interesting to do. This project came with me to Atlantic Knitscape. It was probably a really stupid thing to do, because I spent the first evening, I did about, I don't know, maybe 4 rows, 5 rows in between trying to talk to people. I did a couple of rows on the plane, and then yeah, another few rows that evening and through the afternoon whilst I'm chatting to people. Well, what did I say on the previous podcast? I said this one takes some concentration. You can knit across these bits nice and easily, which is quite a fair few stitches here, but when you get to these pattern panels, you have to keep your eye on what you're doing. So yeah, that was really, really terribly clever of me, wasn't it, to take this with me to be chatting whilst I was doing it. So yeah, what did I do? I spent probably the last hour of the first night just kind of looking at it and looking at it some more and knitting a little bit and then looking at it and sort of not wanting to stop what I was doing and knitting a bit more and just kind of looking at it again. I went back up to my room at the end of the night and listened to Bernie's podcast and looked at it properly, and it was like, oh, totally messed it up. There was mate ones missed out. There was bits where I'd not put the garter stitch in the right place. There are a total mess of it. Completely mucked it up to the point where I might as well have not done anything at all that evening. I spent 2.5 hours taking out what I'd done and getting it to a point where I could then start and knit again. To then the next day, I still didn't learn my lesson, and I still did some more on it and still made another mistake. So I'm a moron, clearly. So then I finally put it away and worked on this one instead. And I think by the end of the retreat, I'd got down to the end of this arm and was about to make the cuff on the sleeve. So I got from about here to here. So I got a fair old bit of knitting done on that retreat. But yeah, this one was a really stupid move for me to try and work on this when I'm having a conversation with people. So yeah, congratulations, Angela. Yeah, really looking forward to this one being finished. So that's my Deco Drape. In terms of whips, I think that's pretty much it. Nothing else comes to mind that I'm currently working on or that I have been working on in the last couple of weeks. Right then, so on to a bit of stack acquisition. God knows where I was going with that. Stash acquisition. So do feel free to skip this bit if you're not interested in what I've got, but I do like to show my bits and pieces to people, so to speak. Okay then, so at Atlantic Knitscape then, I showed you this pin earlier. I got that, okay. I also met the lovely Bernie and her husband from Bear in Sheep's Clothing, and not at the retreat, but I got this from Bernie subsequently. I absolutely love this pin. Look at that, Gin and Bear. This little polar bear. He's the bear on all their packaging. He has some little stars and hearts on his jumper, and he's just gorgeous. So he's a cutie there. I could not resist this pin. I don't actually drink gin, but pretty much everyone I know drinks gin and loves gin. So yeah, I thought Gin and Barrett was really quite cute. That's my Lauren Elkin pin. I've had that forever. You've seen that before. But here's another one with Petey Polar Bear. And of course I showed him to my mom, and so of course she's bought one as well. One of each of those pins. But yeah, aren't they sweet? Look there, look, there's little stars and little hearts on his jumper. This is actually some stash that I got from holiday that I forgot to show you. So this little pin here says Mist Trail on it. That's the hike that we did in Yosemite up to the waterfalls. So on the last episode where I showed you footage of me knitting in various different places, the Mist Trail was one of the places that I knitted. So I saw this in the little visitor centre and had to have that for my bag. These are some little stitch markers that I got from Ann Kattenbjörg, and I'm sorry if I said that wrong, but that's the best I can do, I think. But yeah, I've seen these before on other people's podcasts, and so when I saw them in real life, just the miserable faced kitties to hang off your knitting and just be angry with you, I thought they're hilarious. So they came home with me. I got 2 different bunches and I gave one to my mum. So we've got sort of mixed faces now instead of all the same. What else have I got on here then? Right, this pin here is from my mum. This was a little gift that she got for me the other day. We do this, I get little bits and bobs from my mum, and my mum does the same for me. And we sort of, again, we share new indie dyers that we've found and makers and stuff like that. So yeah, this is something that my mum got for me because I now am the proud owner of a spinning wheel, but more about that another time. So here, all these different pins are actually nestled on my Cottage number 9 project bag. Anyone that watches Grace O'Neill's podcast will have seen these before. So that's Babble's Travelling Yarn. So she's actually the whole reason that I found out about Atlantic Knitscape. She showcased it on her podcast, Also Nathan Taylor, so Sockmatician, he had spoken about it as well, so I was kind of aware of it, and it's because of those guys that I ended up going. But yes, these bags, go on, Grace has shown these on her podcast in the past, and I always thought how impressive they looked. And it's not till you actually get hold of one that you actually fully begin to understand just how amazing they are. Okay, so this is what my Deco Drape is living inside at the moment. I'll just put that to one side so I can show you the bag properly. The fabric, first of all, it's really sturdy quality fabric. It's almost like the sort of textiles that you would use for upholstery. You know, it's really thick, but by the same token, it's forgiving. You know what I mean? It's not too stiff that it's not soft. So it's nice and soft, but at the same time, it's very sturdy. You can see that just stands up on my hand with nothing even inside it. The bit that the runners go through, so the things to be able to actually do it up, this is really sturdy fabric as well. A bit of a bugbear of mine is when this bit's all flimsy and floppy and the rest of the bag is all sturdy. I just think, well, surely that is going to wear. But yeah, not in this case. This is really sturdy fabric here. The handle is made of a thick sturdy fabric. You can feel that it's interfaced really well as well. It feels like it's got some sort of quilting batting in between here and here, not just a thin layer. So that's lovely. The stitching is wonderful. Box bottom. You can see the lady's label is there. It's constructed really so nicely. These pull tie things are made from coordinated fabric to the fabric inside. Sorry, I'm jingling here. I'm just going to try and keep that quiet. The fabric inside is coordinated with those pull ties. And then the best bit for me is this. I mean, I've kind of defaced this thing by putting my pins all over it, but when you do this up, so you pull this wraparound section then becomes a handle to actually be able to hold it with. And I've never seen something like that before. I just thought how clever that was. I've never seen other bags like that. You'll have seen bags where you've got a handle on there as well, but it's not been as cleverly thought out as that, not on any of the ones that I've seen anyway. I don't profess to have seen every project bag in the world, but I just think this one is particularly clever in its construction and particularly sturdy. So yeah, that's cottage number 9, or my cottage number 9, and she has an Etsy shop, and I will link to her shop, and do definitely take a look at her things. I bought another bag for my mum, which also had like a little notions pouch with it, a different size bag. It was more of a sock sack, and yeah, my mum was absolutely in love with it, and has since bought you know, one of these. In fact, I think she's bought a couple of these of her own since then as well, because they're wonderful. They really are wonderful. So my Yarndale pins, then I got some of the just sort of the Yarndale merch, which are these little pins here and here. These are only a couple of quid. They're really not particularly expensive, so I didn't mind getting a few of them. I've picked up the bags in previous years, but I didn't have a pin fetish up until very recently. This one really made me laugh. You've seen the sinister cardie that's going around. Well, this pin is the sinister cat wearing the sinister cardie, so that really made me laugh. So these are again from An Katin Bjog, which means something like little kitten or little cute cat or something like that, I think. And then there's this guy here saying, thanks Bernard, saying it's sweater weather. I don't know whether you can read that or not, but it's sweater weather. If you've seen the little meme going around on the internet with the two ladies having a back and forth on, I think it's like Saturday Night Live or something, going, but it's okay because it's sweater weather. Sweater weather. So yeah, I've been having a chat about sweater weather with my friend in the car on the way there, and I saw this badge and was like, yeah, I have to have that. This one is me. This is Sue Stratford, and it says Prosecco and Pearl. I don't think I'm going to be able to get that to focus, but yeah, just trust me. It says Prosecco and Pearl, which is me, absolutely down to a T. If I'm going to be having an alcoholic beverage, usually with my knitting, you can guarantee that it will be Prosecco. I said before, I'm not a massive gin fan, but Prosecco, yes, that is me. So, you know, if anyone wanted to buy me Prosecco and send it to me, then yeah, definitely do so. So yeah, there's my Prosecco badge from Sue Stratford. I think Sue had like a badge pin club. I think this might have been one of her like pin of the month type ones a bit back. I got one for my mum as well, which was Power to the Sheeple, which was really cool. And then I got one of these badges for my mum as well, which said it's the final cast off. They were all kind of like based around popular culture but with a knitty twist, which I thought was really cool. So that's that. This little thing that was making all that noise earlier, I picked up in the airport as we left Ireland on the way back. I just thought how cute it was because it had sheepies. No sheepies on it. Yeah, so that's all my accoutrements that are dangling off my project bag that I bought at the marketplace at Atlantic Knitscape. I mentioned in the last episode that the final part of the N Club was going to be arriving at my house, and here it is. So here's what arrived. I have the world's most gorgeous colour and gorgeous feel of yarn that there has ever been anywhere ever and will ever be ever again. So I think everybody probably at this point just needs to stop making yarn because this has arrived. This is the thing. It's gorgeous. It's so gorgeous. It's called Cayuga Lake and it's by the Neighbourhood Fibre Company. And it is on their Capital Luxury Lace base. There are 560 yards in this skein and I think it's 110 grams or something like that. It's 80% wool, 10% cashmere and 10% nylon, and it is just wonderful. It's I can't impress on you just kind of quite how lovely this thing is. I really desperately want to cake this up, but I wanted to show you it in its form like this before I've caked it up. The project, we've had the release now in the Facebook group, so that's what it's going to turn into. It's sort of this incredibly detailed central circular spiral panel that starts from like a little pinhole-y cast on, I think, here. And then there are sections of mohair as well as sections of that Cayuga Lake. So here's the mohair, also from the Neighbourhood Fibre Company. And this one's in the colourway Seneca Lake. These kits that Laura has for her N Club, she works very closely with indie dyers to develop colourways and yarns specifically for her patterns. So this has been made specifically for that particular pattern. So that's really, really cool. So she decided to call the pattern then Finger Lake. As you can see, there's another picture of it in here just to give you an idea of what that's going to be like. It's kind of a scarf, I guess, somewhere between or a wrap, or I don't know. It's a bit long to be a scarf. It's a bit small to be a wrap. It's not shawl shaped. I don't know quite what you would describe it as, but still, it's absolutely beautiful. And the beads on this one are going to be pre-strung, and Laura said that, you know, she'd done plenty of kind of research into the fibre, because ordinarily she said you wouldn't want to pre-string beads when the fibre content had cashmere in it, just in terms of pilling and stuff. But she said the way that it's spun, absolutely it's going to be no problem at all to pre-string the beads. The other projects that we've done, the beads have been knitted on during the actual process of knitting. They haven't been pre-strung at all. So this will be a new thing for me, to bead knitting by pre-stringing and pulling up the beads as you work. So that's something I'm really interested to look into. It came with some sweets as well. They're long gone. I can't show you those, I'm afraid. There's the little card that came with it, the kit when it came in the post. So that was like the little teaser. And so that, I assume, is that end panel So yeah, it's going to be beautiful. There are a bunch of people already started knitting it in the Facebook group. There have been work in progress pictures appearing. People have got really quite far with this thing already. It's only been out a week, maybe just over a week, something like that. But yeah, people are absolutely racing along with it. So yeah, I'm quite behind, which is irritating me. I want to get this on the needles, but there's another one I want to get on the needles more. Just to show you the beads though that came in the kit. That's those. Look at those. They've got like an AB coating, so they reflect all different colours in the light. So they're like a smoky grey blue, but with the AB coat on them. They're beautiful. She always gives you like a little tool for being able to thread the beads as well. And then the other extra that she put in the kit this time was this, which is well cool. It's a Chico bag that Laura's had custom made with the N Club logo on it. If I just show you the whole thing, it's massive. It's absolutely massive. I took this thing to Yarndale with me and proudly carried it about with the N Club symbol on it. Let me just open it properly so you can see. Excuse the noise. Might edit this bit out or not. I don't know. Depends how I'm feeling. So there you go. There's the bag, what that opens out to, and it's so spacious. You can't really tell from where you're looking, I don't think, but it's massive and you can get loads in it, and it's really strong and wonderful and reusable, and it says N Club on it, so what more could you want, really? So talking about clubs and N Club and mystery knit-alongs, yarn-alongs and stuff like that, I have signed up for the texture time. Again, I've left these in the skeins so that I can show you. Let's just show you the whole thing. This is the kit that I chose. I can't remember what number it was on Stephen West's release, but just give you a better look at the colours. So this is the melted suri. So this, I believe, is alpaca. It's all ching fibres. And then the other yarns that I've got are this sort of tan, beigey, creamy, peachy gradient. It starts from here, sort of, I don't know, tan terracotta-y maybe, right the way through to this sort of peach. And I just thought how beautiful they were. It's not really this sort of colours that I tend to usually go for, as I think probably you've started to get a feel for. I like my greens and purples and things, so I wanted to get something that was a little bit out of my comfort zone. So that's what I did. There was another kit that he did where this pop of colour here, well, it's not necessarily so much of a pop in this palette, but this was like in a minty green, and I really did like that one, and that was my other choice that I might have gone for, but I decided no, don't do the mint greeny thing, because I've got so many other things that are greeny. So I went for this one, and I think I'm pleased. So the pattern was released like literally just last night. I've got the first part all printed up and ready to go, but obviously I need to cake these skeins of yarn yet. So there's my pattern ready to go. So I'm quite excited about that, and especially because I'm so close to finishing this one as well. So hopefully I can get that finished. I don't want to start anything else until I've finished it. There's not enough work needing doing on that to justify me being able to do anything other than finish it first. So I'm going to be strict with myself. So that's two things I'm going to be making. Just wanted to talk a little bit though about these mystery knit-alongs and things. I have to say the yarn along, of the 3 designs that came out, this one is the only one that really I was really excited about. I thought the meshy twist was lovely, but I'm not so massively enamoured with a couple of the colours, or just the way that the colours work together. I think it's beautiful, it's lovely, it's just not necessarily my style. The final one, I absolutely adore the yarn that came with it, but I'm not particularly keen on his final shawl design. It was called Cafe Knitting. I'll see if I can put a picture in. Now, loads of people have gone absolutely mad about that design, but to me, I don't know, I don't like it. So I won't be knitting that one, and I'm not sure whether I'm going to carry on with meshy twist or not, or whether I'm just going to find other projects for that yarn. The yarn's gorgeous, I love the colours, I just don't necessarily love them together, and I'm not sure whether I can bring myself to just knit that huge meshy thing. I don't know. So for me, that club is one that I've enjoyed being in. I really did, and it's been dead exciting getting the parcels and packages and things, but I think probably those are not necessarily my favourite types of knit along that I've done. Excuse me. The Laura Nelkin though, conversely the N Club, every single thing that she's designed in every single kit has been right up my street. I've loved them. I've loved every single one, and then looking back at the other things that she's ever released as well, I can't say that there's much of anything that is on my I don't particularly like it list. So really I think, you know, her style is something that I really like, and I've enjoyed having, you know, stuff come in and the excitement of a new kit to get my teeth into and stuff like that. So I've signed up for next year's N Club, but I don't think I'll be signing up for the yarn along again. I didn't this time. It was my husband that bought it for me for a gift, and bless him, I love him for it. And this shawl is gorgeous, but it's a lot of money to fork out for sort of some yarn that I may or may not want to knit what comes out with it. If that's a sentence. I don't think that was a sentence, never mind. You know what I mean. You know what I'm getting at. I don't think I'm going to sign up for that one again. But the mystery knit along that was texture time, that's a different style. So this one, with the yarn along, it was here's your kit, here's the pattern, fill your boots, knit it. Everyone's knitting the same thing. Everyone's knitting the same pattern in the same colours. The texture time was very much a different animal in terms of its real mystery. So it's going to be released in parts. So there's a part this week, there'll be a part next, the week after, and so on and so forth. And everybody's knitting it differently. There were just notes released about how to choose your colours, what sorts of things you might want to look for, and I just think I'm a lot more confident that I will be really pleased with the final product. I might not, you know, there is always that element, I guess, but you know, that's part of the excitement, is the mystery aspect of it. So I'm really excited for this one, and I've seen the shawls that have been his mystery knit-alongs in previous years, and I can't think that there's one that I've not liked. I think they've all been absolutely amazing. He's God. He really is a god. It's just that his yarn along is not for me. So I mentioned then that I had been looking into spinning, and I've had a couple of influencers in recent months that have really sort of cemented that idea that it was something I was going to do. Originally my mum had a spinning wheel set up next door, and she never used it. She really wanted it, and went and had lessons on how to use one and got one, and then just for whatever reason she's not had a great time with her mobility, and she can't really get around very easily and stuff like that, and I think she struggles sometimes kind of moving her feet and stuff, and she couldn't do the pedaling, so unfortunately that wheel kind of stayed there and didn't get used, and she found a lady that wanted to buy it from her, and she got most of the money back, which was great. In and around that time, my interest was piqued. And whilst the wheel that my mum had, which was an Ashford Traveller, was not necessarily something that would match my needs and wants and things, it was something that made me really start thinking about spinning. After that, I went to a local guild meeting just to kind of get a better idea of what it was all about. As I say, I think I mentioned earlier, I had a little go at drop spindling, but I didn't get near a spinning wheel. So then again, Marina from Pineapple Knits, she's recently been doing lots of research about spinning. Chevy Rell, she very often show you things that she's been spinning on her wheel, and I'm just kind of surrounded by it. There's lots of people in the community, for obvious reasons, that do spin or do talk about spinning, and it just made me think, I'd really quite like to have a go. So when there was a lady actually at Atlantic Knitscape with her wheel, fantastic, perfect, I got to have a go. It cemented for me that was something I wanted to do, and so yeah, I went and ordered the Ashford Joy. So I now am the proud owner of an Ashford Joy. So when I went to Yarndale, pretty much most of the stuff that I got was fibre and fibre related for spinning. So I went to Yarndale then, the weekend just gone. I went with my friend Sarah, who used to own the local yarn shop. And we had an absolutely fantastic time. I'm going to put some footage in for you just to give you a bit of a flavour of what it was like. So whilst I was at Yarndale, I met a couple of people who I would say are almost kind of heroes of mine within the knit and crochet side of things. There's a lady called Deirdre Eyes, and I completely did not know what to say to her, but I really, really wanted to meet her because her blanket that she designed, which is called the Sophie's Universe, it was something that was with me for such a long time through such a meaningful period in my life that I just kind of felt I needed to just talk to her and fangirl all over her, obviously. But yeah, I kind of got a bit like, oh, I don't know what to say now. I've said your name and made you come over to me and talk to me. So she probably thinks I'm a complete lunatic now. But anyway, just to give you an idea, this blanket here was designed by Deirdre. And it was a free pattern. Look at that. Just look at it. It is absolutely beautiful. I did show this in episode 1 of my podcast. But for anyone who hasn't seen it and certainly wouldn't be bothered to go back and have a look, here it is. It's the most fantastic thing I think I've ever made. And it took me like an entire year. But during that year, I went from being full-time employed clinical development manager running a foundation degree in hearing aid audiology to being pregnant with a son that was a rainbow child that we never thought would actually arrive, to being giving birth to said rainbow child, through several sort of uncomfortable and difficult trips to hospital and stuff. This thing came with me everywhere and did all of those things, and it's just, there's so much memory and so much meaning woven into every thread of this thing. Whilst I was nursing Ezra when he was a tiny baby, he would sit on a nursing cushion in my lap and get on with what he was doing whilst I would crochet on this. He's just, there is so much in this, there is so much love in this thing, and I just think it's amazing. And for Deirdre to have come up with something like this is amazing, but to have just then gone ahead and published this online for everybody everywhere to enjoy. And there was another lady involved at the time called Esther, who made really detailed tutorials that went on YouTube to like literally walk you through every single round and every single stitch of this blanket, so that as a complete noob, someone who was very, very new to crochet, I was able to make this thing. I just thought that was so generous and such an amazing lady, or amazing couple of ladies, to be able to give that much to the community. So yeah, I wanted to go and talk to her and just thank her, really. And so that was Deirdre. So I met Deirdre and made an idiot of myself, but hey, I got to meet her. She was really, really lovely. She was really kind, but I think she kind of thought I was a bit of an idiot. As well as her, I also met a lady called Jen Arnold Culliford. Now, many of you will probably have heard of her, I'm sure. She's got Arnold Culliford Knitwear website, and she has now written 4 books, I think, actually. I think there's one that I don't have, but last year at Yarndale I picked up this one, and I just thought, as a new knitter, how blooming fantastic this thing was. And I have used some of the techniques that are described in here, and the whole ethos that Jen has is she wants people to improve what they're doing. She wants to give people ways of thinking differently about their knitting and looking at it in a way of, you know, how can I do what I've done but next time make it better and better and better. And I think, yeah, she's a teacher. She's incredibly talented knitter, and yeah, just this book is wonderful. The way that it's set out is that there's a project and a new technique for every single month of the year, and it walks you through so many different things. There's like Intarsia and Fair Isle and other things like coloured dominance. You've got pinhole cast-ons, provisional cast-ons, steeks, turning heels, afterthought heel. You know, there's so many really cool techniques all described in here, and the one that really caught my eye, that's been useful to me particularly, was helical knitting. Sorry, I'm just a bit distracted because the cat's being a bit of a cow over there. She clearly wants my attention. I've been recording for too long. But yeah, helical knitting. So that's the process of being able to knit round in spirals, so that you have you can have 2 colours, or let's say you could even alternate skeins in a project without actually having a noticeable jog, or in the case of alternating skeins, you wouldn't have a line where you were twisting the yarn on itself each row. So that's a technique that I used in the ambient sweater that I was wearing in episode 1, and it's a technique that I used to alternate the 2 skeins of yarn from Die Candy for when I was knitting this. So it allows you to do that and not have, you know, a seam going up it somewhere where I'm twisting the yarns over, because that's the last thing you want, really, knitting something like that. But equally, I thought that probably it would be a bit dangerous to just knit with one skein and then knit with the next, because you don't know whether that's going to be really, really noticeable. There's always a possibility with hand-dyed yarn, so it's much better to alternate skeins if you possibly can. So yeah, that was Yarndale last year, and then at Edinburgh Yarn Festival I picked this one up. This has been really, really cool, because in there it describes sort of cabling without cable needles and fixing mistakes in cables and all sorts of other bits, you know, to improve your cable knitting. So I was absolutely determined that if she had a new book out, which she did, that I would get that one. So this is something new to learn about lace, and again it's talking about tinking and different ways of achieving your yarn overs, and yarn overs with pearls versus yarn overs with knits, and just really tightening up your skill level. You know, you can be a lace knitter and have knitted plenty of lace projects, but there's always ways of improving what you're doing, and I think this book will really help me to do that. So I introduced myself to Jen. I asked her to sign my book, which she did. There we go. So Jen signed my book. But also, I mentioned to her that I've got a bit of an issue with helical knitting at the moment, because when you're knitting something that's plain stockinette, it's brilliant and it works really, really, really well. But what I found was my Zweig, which I've been threatening to show you for episode after episode after episode, and finally I think today might be the day. This was my Edinburgh Yarn Festival project. So this is the yarn, the only yarn that I bought at Edinburgh this year. And it is Townhouse Yarns. It's their Fade Street 4-ply. I got 2 different colours. So this is Phenomenon. And that cakes up like that. I got 3 of those. And then I got Cupcake. Now you've seen Cupcake before because the I-cord edging on my Shusui Shrug is made from Cupcake. But here is my Zweig so far. Now I'm saying Zweig, I don't know whether it's Zweig or Zweig or Zweig, I don't know, but I think it's Zweig because that's what Caitlin Hunter calls it herself. So we're going to go with what she says because she designed it. But here it is. And you can see I've kind of done all my lace bit, I've done my colour work, that's all fine, and it flew and I loved it and it's beautiful and it fits really, really nicely. But I am trying to knit the body using helical knitting to alternate my skeins. I am also putting the little cabled pattern on. So something new to learn about cables book, brilliant. It showed me how to do that without actually needing a cable needle, which cable needles can be a pain, and especially when you've got to do cables like every few stitches. Brilliant. However, helical knitting requires that at the end of a round you stop knitting with one ball of yarn and slip the last 3 stitches purlwise. Excuse me, I've just got some fibres on my nose. So slip the last 3 stitches purlwise, and then you will pick up your next ball, which will be waiting there, and you will knit round, and again you will drop that ball of yarn 3 stitches from the end and slip those last stitches and pick up the yarn that you left last time, and so on and so forth, and you work round in this sort of double helix that never quite meets itself, and that's how that works, except for when you're slipping the stitches and they're overlapping for where this cable is. And I thought I could get my head round how to do it, and then I wasn't sure whether I'd managed it or not, and whether now my cables were misaligned to where they were supposed to be, and so I put it away, and I've not picked it up since because I'm a bit confused with it, and it's killing me because this is beautiful and the yarn cost me an absolute arm and a leg, and it's gorgeous, gorgeous yarn, and I've put in a ton of work on it, and I really, really enjoy knitting it, and I want to get back to it, but I've already done that cable pattern. I don't want to rip it back and redo it and do it as plain stockinette, so I wanted to find a way of making the helical knitting work with this patterning, but I didn't know how to do it. But I thought if there's a lady who will know how to do it, it'll be Jen, because she wrote a book that had helical knitting in it, so I'd have a chat to her about it. So yeah, I brought it up. I said to her, you know, I love your books, I love, you know, the stuff that you've done so far. I was really pleased to meet you. Can you sign my book? I'm struggling. Help. And she said, well, it's funny you should mention that, because I've got a brand new book coming out in the next week or so, and that is something new to learn about helical knitting. Awesome. It's exactly what I need. It's not out yet. It's being released in 4 parts. She said, look, you know, it's not in print. It's going to be on Ravelry at the moment, but do go and have a look. And she explained that it will absolutely show me how to progress the knit that I'm stuck on at the moment. So I'm so excited about this. This comes out at the end of next week. Why has everything come out all at the same time? I've got this one, which is... I just had a bit of a camera fail. My battery ran out, but I didn't realise. So yeah, I was just saying, I've got this one. So I've got my Zweig that I can finally get back to. I've got the Texture Time mystery knit along that I'm absolutely itching to get into. I've got my blooming Finger Lake End Club that I want to cast on, and I've got my Bad Wolf Girl thing to finish, and I've just everything seems to have just all happened at the same time. I guess it's because you know, the festivals and the releases and things are all kind of like timed together or whatever, but yeah. And then I want to spin. I really want to spin. So anyway, I don't know. I think there's probably a lot worse problems that a person could have, but yeah, that's my current quandary. I think probably I will leave it there. I have got some bits of stack acquisition, and I have got some bits of sort of spinning that I've been doing and other things like that. But I think really this episode has gone on for probably quite some time at this point. And I don't know that necessarily you want to be bombarded with anything else. So I think I'll leave it there for now, and then actually I'll have something to talk about next time as well, won't I? It's took me a bit of time to process in my head, I think, what I wanted to say this time. Just to kind of, I don't know, make it so that I'm not just going, oh yeah, I like this, and this is really nice, and oh look, I knitted this and it's nice, and oh look, this yarn's soft. I wanted to be able to say something probably that was just a little bit more useful than that. And I filmed a podcast last week and then promptly deleted it all because I decided it wasn't right. And I don't want to just do this for the sake of doing it. It's a hobby of mine at the moment, and if I'm going to put something out there, I want to be pleased with it and happy with it, and I want it to be hopefully enjoyable to the end user. So that's why the gap. The other thing, I've noticed that I've had quite an increase in the amount of subscribers over the last few weeks. So just wanted to say hi to everybody that's new to the channel. And thank you for coming along to chat to me about all my knitty stuff, and to be there and to listen to me chatting to you, and the comments that I get and the likes and all the views and everything else that my channel has been attracting. I'm really, really grateful for, and so I just wanted to say thank you so much. It's really enriching my experience of this craft that we're all so fond of. So to be able to have this kind of conversation and to feel that I'm really beginning to become part of the community. And one last thing, there was a lady, right? I lost a bet with Richard. He said, you're going to Yarndale, somebody there is going to recognise you. I'm like, don't be stupid. Like, my podcast is probably watched by about, I don't know, a couple of hundred people. And they are spread all over the world. There is no way that there's going to be someone there. And at least even if there is someone there, there's no way they're going to come up to me and say anything. Except someone did. So I lost a bet. And it was this most lovely lady who was working on one of the stands, and I can't for the life of me find which stand it was that she was working on. But she was like, I know you. I know who you are. And I was like, oh God, no you don't. And I was dead embarrassed. But she was so lovely. And yeah, so that was really cool. So yeah, I lost a bet with Richie B. And yeah, I'm like dead famous and that now, innit? But yeah, I just wanted to say thank you so much to everybody for coming back week after week and listening to me ramble on about my knitting. And I really hope that you guys are enjoying this as much as I am enjoying putting it together for you. And yeah, so that's it. That's enough from me for this week. You take care. Have a wonderful couple of weeks. I won't promise to be back in a fortnight because I just don't know what life's going to throw at me at the moment. But I will be back as soon as I can for another episode of The Knitter Next Door. You take care and happy knitting. Bye now. How are you doing? Do you want to be on a podcast? Do you want to be on The Knitter Next Door? Do you?